We're continuing the performance review series focusing on the Buffalo Bills offensive tackles today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Monday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for my listeners. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Well, folks, I apologize for publishing today's episode of the podcast a bit late. Had quite the twist in my plans, as you have been made aware of. I was spending last week in Mobile, Alabama for the Senior Bowl, and then leaving from Mobile to go to Arizona for the Super Bowl, and had to cancel the Arizona part of my trip. My wife got sick. Had to drive home on Sunday from Alabama to Charlotte. Got home Sunday night and just didn't have time between taking care of my daughter last night and this morning to get her to preschool to get the podcast out as I normally would. So some unexpected variables on my behalf led to a later than usual podcast, but here it is, and we should be back in our normal routine the rest of the week. So sorry about that, but sometimes life gets in the way of everything going exactly how I want it to all the time. So hopefully you give me some grace on this. Hopefully my wife feels better very soon, and we can get back into our rhythm here. But today on the podcast, our focus is on the Buffalo Bills offensive tackles. And so we're going to talk Dion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, the depth, including a player that I think we need to be really mindful of as they enter their third season. That could be a big boost to this unit. So let's get into it, starting with the Bills left tackle, Dion Dawkins, a 2017 second-round pick, number 63 overall. Dion is 28 years old. He turns 29 in April. He's entering year 3 of his 4-year, $58 million extension. And I'll tell you what, I think there's an opportunity with this contract to get cap savings right now, to give Dion Dawkins additional years and even more money. And I talked to Greg Thompson of Cover One about this idea, and Greg kind of dug into it and thought that the Bills could announce a 3-year, $45 million extension to Dion Dawkins, and structured in a way that gives the Bills between $6 and $7 million in cap space this year. And given Dion is entering his age 29 season, I really don't have much concern about extending him and maintaining a high-quality left tackle into his, early to mid-30s. I think that Dion and his skill set will age quite well within the Bills' offense. And so I think he's a good extension candidate to lock him up for more years, give him more money, and in return, give the Bills some much-needed cap relief this year. And that's one of my favorite things about this performance review series, is that it forces me to take a look at every single player's individual situation and obviously evaluate the player that they are and project them moving forward. But the contract piece of it is always fascinating, because I look at every single contract and I try to uncover stuff like this. And, we've done this for a lot of players, whether it was Isaiah McKenzie, Nyheim Hines, Josh Allen, and that list will continue here as we work through the rest of the roster. But this is why these conversations are so important, because it really gives us a good picture for what the opportunities are for this team this offseason to find space, take care of their players, and then ultimately add to the roster. And I think with Dion Dawkins, I look at him as an extension candidate to achieve, again, like I said, more years for Dion, more money for Dion, and some cap relief for the Bills this year. In 2022, Dion started 15 games, played 95% of the snaps, committed 12 penalties, gave up 3 sacks, and 30 pressures. As far as my review, Dion continues to be a highly consistent starting left tackle for the Buffalo Bills. He's locked down the position now for 6 consecutive seasons. He's extremely durable, and I think he's proving to be one of the better offensive linemen in team history. I feel really good about him being Josh Allen's blindside protector. His skill set doesn't limit the offense in any way. He's extremely athletic. He's powerful. He can run block. He can pass block. I think his pass blocking has been better than his run blocking. But again, no limitations. You love the personality. I got a chance to be around him at training camp for a few days this year, and Dion is unapologetically himself. The same character that you see in his social media and in his press conferences and in some of the content that the Bills put out is the guy he is all the time. And I love that about him. I think he's a big-time asset to the locker room with the energy and personality that he brings to the table. He's a leader, right? That's something that's really emerged in recent years when it comes to Dion Dawkins. And I love what he brings to the organization in terms of community service. This guy is phenomenal for the Western New York community. He's really put a lot into that. And I know it meant a lot to him to be the Buffalo Bills Walter Payton Man of the Year. And just a consummate pro in every possible way, whether it's the way he performs, the consistency, the durability, the personality, the leadership, and what he brings to the community. I mean, this is a guy you want on your football team for a long, long time. And so that's why I think he's not only a high-level performer right now, but will be down the road. And that's why I think he's ultimately a guy that I'd be looking at for an extension candidate for all the reasons I've already mentioned. As far as his 2023 outlook, I'm just looking for more of the same from Dion Dawkins. Continue to be consistent and reliable. And I think what would help Dion Dawkins is more consistency at left guard. Tomorrow on the podcast, we'll talk about the interior offensive line. But Roger Saffold, I don't think, had a good year. And I think when you look throughout Dawkins' tenure in Buffalo, there's been nothing but instability next to him at left guard. And I think if you really shore that up, if you really figure out that left guard spot, and maybe it's just a matter of sliding Ryan Bates over from right guard to left guard, I think you'll get even more high-level performance from Dion Dawkins. And I hate that it's been such a long-standing issue. Really, I mean, has Dion had a player next to him at left guard with any level of consistency? I mean, I know Saffold started every game this year, but he didn't play well. And then I look throughout his time in Buffalo, and it's like, well, it's been a different guy all the time. Sometimes multiple different players throughout the same season. And so stability next to him, I think, would unlock potentially even a higher level of performance for Dion Dawkins. That was an easy conversation. The rest of these conversations might be a little bit more challenging. So let's dig into Spencer Brown, the Bills' starting right tackle. A 2021 third-round pick, number 93 overall. Spencer is 24 years old. He turns 25 later this month in February. He's entering year 3 of his 4-year, $4.8 million rookie contract. In 2022, he started 14 games, was on the field for 88% of those snaps, committed 6 penalties, gave up 4 sacks, and 42 pressures. As far as his 2022 review, I would say he was inconsistent, very up and down. Not all bad, but there were some mental mistakes, and he took some L's, right? He got beat from time to time. I do think context matters here, and I know that this is a talking point that I brought up a lot, but it's important. Spencer Brown played tight end in high school, 8-man football, went to Northern Iowa, only played offensive line for 2 seasons. He missed all of his final season in 2020 because of the COVID year. They canceled the season. And so after not playing football at all and only 2 years ever in his life with game experience at offensive tackle, becomes a rookie starter for the Bills in 2021, had some promising moments. But then coming out of his rookie season, he missed the entire offseason due to back surgery. And he actually came back very late in the preseason to the point where I was actually surprised that he started in week 1 because of all the reps that he missed. And so I'm willing to give him some grace for the inconsistency because of the context. Now, of course, year 3 is huge for him. And when you talk about Spencer Brown, you always have to bring up the physical upside. Spencer Brown, when considering his size, is one of the top premier athletes in the NFL. He is. He is absolutely one of the most physically gifted players, not on the Bills. He's the most physically gifted player on the Bills, but one of the most physically gifted players in the entire NFL. And that should make you excited. Now, that's not a reason to stay overly committed to him, but it's a reason to be optimistic that he can take a major step forward this coming year. And so when we get into my outlook for Spencer Brown in 2023, he has a chance to take a massive, massive step. He's a toolsy player, but raw. And he fits into this bucket of toolsy and raw players that the Bills have drafted, and a lot of them have turned out to be high-level performers. Looking at guys like Josh Allen, Tremaine Edmonds, Dawson Knox. Toolsy and raw, took a little bit of time for them to unlock their potential, but when it was unlocked, you were really satisfied with the player you got. I think Spencer Brown has a chance to kind of follow suit there and have a big breakout season in 2023. Now, he's obviously the favorite to be the Bills' starting right tackle, but I do think there should be some meaningful competition for him. He's got to earn it. His growth is going to be very important for the offense overall. And as far as I know, he's healthy, and that will really help him this offseason to have a normal offseason, develop, get ready for a season, and play his best football and prove that he can be the long-term answer for the Bills at right tackle, because the ceiling here is still very, very, very high. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual, so when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. Therapy can be so beneficial for you to learn coping skills, self-empowerment, and to overcome challenges so that you can be your best self. Everyone deserves to feel their best. BetterHelp makes it easier to get started. As the world's largest therapy service, they've matched millions of people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Get all the benefits of in-person therapy, plus it's more convenient, more accessible, and more affordable. You can get unstuck with BetterHelp. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's get into the Bills' depth at offensive tackle a little bit here. And you'll notice that the two major players are expiring contracts. So we'll start with David Quessenberry, a 2022 free agent signing. He's 32 years old. He turns 33 in August. His contract is expired. He completed his 1-year, $1.8 million deal with the team. In 2022, he played in 16 games. He started 3 games, wound up being on the field for 396 snaps, some of them at left tackle, some of them at right guard, and some at right tackle. He gave up 4 sacks, 18 pressures, and committed 2 penalties. As far as his 2022 review, I think Quessenberry proved to be a versatile backup. came in and played meaningful snaps at 3 different positions for the offensive line. Now, he's not a starter for a reason, right? There was definitely some lowlights baked into those 396 snaps, but was able to step in and play in, some important spots for the team. I think he's reasonable depth. And I think we have to be mindful that some of the time that he was on the field, it was on that bad ankle, and he had to gut through some performances when the Bills really needed him. And I think that certainly contributed to some of the inconsistency, but at the end of the day, he's a backup player. As far as his 2023 outlook, I wouldn't mind him being back in the mix again as the same versatile backup that can help you at 4 spots, right? And I think that matters. Of course, your backups aren't as good as your starters. But when you have a guy that can help you get through games at right tackle, left tackle, left guard, and right guard, and keep your offense on schedule at a reasonable rate, you feel good about that. Now, he's 33. He's entering his age 33 season, and he's had some dynamics that, kind of got in the way of his development as a player. And so I don't necessarily believe that there's steps for him to take, right? I don't think he's all of a sudden going to be a more consistent performer, but more time in the system, more time with Aaron Cromer to adapt his techniques, I think could help him take a step next forward. But again, keeping that all in perspective. So we'll see if he's back. He won't be expensive to bring back, and he can help you at 4 spots. He's a veteran that has a year under his belt in the system. And so I think those are important layers to consider, or at least for the Bills to consider as they decide on what to do with David Quessenberry's expiring contract. Let's move on to Bobby Hart, a 2022 free agent signing. He's 28 years old. He turns 29 in August. His contract is expired. He completed his 1-year, $1.2 million deal. Bobby Hart played in 15 games in 2022, did not start any games, wound up being on the field for 125 snaps on offense. And of those 125 snaps, 97 were as a utility blocker, more of a blocking tight end, a jumbo tight end. And so for his review, I thought he brought good value as a jumbo tight end. They had an effective package for him that allowed the Bills to have heavy sets in the run game, and of course keep him into block as a tight end in pass pro. And so instead of that being Quentin Morris or Dawson Knox, it was Bobby Hart, who is a better pass blocker than those players. And when you put Bobby Hart next to Spencer Brown or next to Dion Dawkins, you can really widen the rush angles for pass rushers. It makes it a longer path, right? And you're going up against an experienced pass blocker. I know that we all understand that Bobby Hart's not a great blocker, right? You don't necessarily want this guy playing tackle for you or guard for you. But as that extra guy in 6-man protections that has length, that has athleticism to an extent, he's reduced a lot of weight throughout his career. I think you can get value out of him in that role. Now, it's obviously a replaceable role. It doesn't mean that Bobby Hart should be back with this in mind. I think you can look at other players on the roster to do the same thing. But as we consider what he brought to the team in 2022, I thought there was good value in that role. Again, obviously a great level of concern about him playing actual snaps at tackle or guard, but I do think the Bills did a good job of getting production from him in that role while also providing depth at 4 different spots. Now, I think it would have taken a lot for Bobby Hart to get into the actual lineup at tackle or guard, because I think between David Quessenberry, Greg Van Roten, there would be some layers that would need that injuries would have to get through to get to Bobby Hart on your offensive line. And so you don't want to necessarily have to rely on those contingencies to keep him out of the lineup. And again, going back to there being a lot of replaceability for his skill set and what he brings. But as I consider, his review and the outlook moving forward, that's what's on my mind. So leaning more into the 2023 outlook, again, with an expired contract, you could see him having a chance to come in and compete for a depth role. I think the team likes him more than the fans do, but I don't think there's a need to be overly concerned about him having a major role in the offense. And when I say major role, I mean being the first guy off the bench at tackle or guard. But if you can have him on the team, he can dress and be your 8th or 9th offensive lineman that can do this jumbo tight end role again, a very replaceable role that could be absorbed by somebody else. But I think that's the overall picture when it comes to the Bills and Bobby Hart. Valentine's Day is coming up, which means romance is in the air more than usual. I don't need to tell you lovebirds that, but you've probably got your date plans already figured out and have been on the calendar for weeks. But have you found the perfect Valentine's Day gift yet? Whether you're celebrating this day of romance or whether you're ready to pop the question, you can find jewelry as unique as she is with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. At BlueNile.com, you can find the perfect piece of jewelry for life's special moments or even create the custom engagement ring of her dreams. Their simple online tools let you choose the diamond shape, size, and clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft that perfect piece to your specifications. Every order is insured and arrives quickly in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shipping is free and so are returns. Right now, you can save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com for up to 50% off. Again, BlueNile.com. All right, I want to talk about Tommy Doyle, and this is an X factor, if you will, for the Bills' offensive line. Let's dig into it. Tommy Doyle, 2021 fifth-round draft pick, number 161 overall. He's 24 years old. He turns 25 this year. I actually don't have the date written down, so he's entering his age 25 season. Entering year 3 of his 4-year, $3.8 million deal. In 2022, he played in one game, and that was 36 snaps versus the Dolphins in week 3. And remember, the Bills roster was really dwindling down. The heat in that game really put the Bills in a tough spot. And so Tommy Doyle came in, wound up playing 3 snaps as the jumbo tight end, right? The Bobby Hart role. So Tommy Doyle was Bobby Hart before Bobby Hart took on that role. And remember, that was a big part of what he did down the stretch as a rookie in 2021. But during those 36 snaps against the Dolphins, he tore his ACL, and he actually stayed in and finished the game. We had no idea that he got hurt. And then I think on the Monday press conference after the game, Sean McDermott casually says, Tommy Doyle's out for the season with a torn ACL. And so there it is. The season was gone for him. But it did happen early in the season, which is good for his outlook for the offseason and being able to be healthy and really position himself to help the team in 2023. So as far as his 2022 review, we really didn't get to see a whole lot of him. One preseason game against the Colts where he played left guard and left tackle. He looked promising, but he hurt his foot, I think, trying to make a tackle, if I'm not mistaken. And then the ACL tear in the only game that he got on the field for during the regular season. Now, Tommy Doyle is unbelievably physically gifted in terms of size, length, and athleticism. He's right there in that type of athletic spear that you get from a Spencer Brown. Unbelievable in terms of size and athleticism. And to me, I think he's the sleeper of this unit. Again, the injury happened in September, so he should be in a good spot to be healthy for most of this season. And so my outlook for 2023 when it comes to Tommy Doyle is that I think he's in line for a couple of different roles. And so the Bills will have to kind of sort out what to do here. But could he be the swing tackle, right? The guy that's the first player off the bench at left tackle and right tackle? Or is he a guy that we should be thinking about as a potential starter at guard? Now, that was a big part of his offseason last year, was cross-training at tackle and guard. And that surprised me because this guy's like 6'8" with 35-inch arms. You wouldn't expect that to be your typical candidate to play guard. That's a lot of length and size or just an interesting body composition to play guard, but the Bills are certainly testing that out. And I think at guard, it could help some of the deficiencies that I've seen when I've watched Tommy Doyle, whether it was at Miami of Ohio or in the exposures that we've had to him in the NFL, where sometimes I think setting and framing blocks on the perimeter has not necessarily been his strength, but also some body control issues where I think he has a tendency to fold at the waist and lean and get off balance, where when things happen a little bit quicker on the interior, it takes away from that space dynamic that can lead to those lunges and just lack of comfort playing on an island. And so maybe there's a chance that all of his potential would be unlocked at guard, despite not necessarily having a frame that tells you he's a tackle, but maybe you get the most out of him at guard. So there's appeal in multiple spots here. I think that's a good thing. Now, I don't think you can go into the season expecting him to be a starting guard or even your first guy off the bench at right tackle or left tackle, but I think there's a chance that he could be. And ultimately, I think he can be a really important depth player and even a potential starter. And at a minimum, I think he's your Bobby Hart player, right? So this is what takes any real urgency away from feeling like you have to bring in Bobby Hart or bring him back, because I think you do have that skill set in Tommy Doyle, who's a younger, cheaper, more talented player, I would say, that I think you can get value out of. So I think the floor here for Tommy Doyle is the Bobby Hart role. The ceiling is he's your starting left guard or right guard, and the in-between is he's the jumbo tight end that also can play 4 spots, and you feel good about him playing those 4 spots. So I think those are your range of outcomes with Tommy Doyle, and really any one of those 3 is good, but obviously there's more significant implications, depending on where he falls into that overall lexicon. So what do the Bills have at left tackle, at offensive tackle? They have a high-quality left tackle in Dion Dawkins, a developing young starter in Spencer Brown, who needs to take a step, and I think there's a good path for him to do that. And certainly his growth could be huge for the Bills' offense. You have an intriguing young player in Tommy Doyle, who is coming off of a torn ACL, and that's it, right? So there's some good there, right? But there's some question marks and some things that should make us a little unsettled as we look at the makeup of this position group right now. So what do the Bills need here? The competition for Spencer Brown at right tackle. That could ultimately be your swing tackle, but also keeping in mind that you do have Tommy Doyle and that David Quessenberry and Bobby Hart are expiring contracts that could somewhat fit into those roles. So you have some in-house options, guys that you have comfort with that have been around that you might want to consider bringing back that could help you more than maybe a low-level player that you bring in from outside the organization. But I think at the end of the day here, it's a big offseason for Spencer Brown. It's a big offseason for Tommy Doyle because those guys can really change the dynamics of this unit. And that's going to be one of the biggest things that I'm going to monitor the rest of the way here throughout this offseason and, seeing what the messaging is about those players. But also, once we get to training camp, my eyes are going to be on those players. Well, certainly who the Bills bring in between now and then is going to matter a lot, and it'll give us some clues as to what they think about Brown and Doyle. But their development is as big of a storyline this offseason as anything. All right, folks, hope you enjoyed this discussion. Tomorrow, we're going to talk interior offensive line, so we'll tie a ribbon on the offensive line and the offense in general with the performance review series. And then Wednesday, Thursday, we'll get into herd mentality and start, doing the same types of conversation for the defensive side of the football. So that's where we're at. And I've really enjoyed this. I hope you have as well. This really helps me shape my perspective for the offseason. And again, it's the foundation for everything that we're going to talk about moving forward with the in-house decisions that the Bills have to make, with the possibilities of bringing in outside players in free agency, and then, of course, the NFL draft. So a really important foundational series of our offseason conversations. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you come on back. Would love it if you take a second to rate, review, share, and subscribe to the podcast. Have a great day. Go Bills. And I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.